Neurons, also known as nerve cells, are the fundamental units of the brain and the nervous system. They are responsible for receiving sensory input from the external world, processing and transmitting information within the body, and facilitating communication between different parts of the body. Here is a detailed look at their structure and function. Structure of neurons. Neurons have several key components. Cell body, also known as soma. The cell body is the spherical part of the neuron that contains the nucleus and other organelles essential for the neuron's survival. Connects to the dendrites which bring information into the neuron and the axon which sends information to other neurons. The job of the cell body is to control all the functions of the cell. Also, it integrates incoming signals and generates outgoing signals to the axon. Dendrites. Dendrites are branch-like extensions or projections from the cell body. They receive chemical signals from the synapses of presynaptic neurons or from the environment. The signals from presynaptic neurons come in the form of neurotransmitters. Dendrites convert these signals into small electrical impulses. Axon, a long, thin extension from the cell body that can be covered with a myelin sheath. They transmit electrical impulses, that is, action potentials, away from the cell body towards other neurons or effectors, means muscles or glands. Myelin sheath, a fatty layer that covers segments of the axon, created by glial cells, insulates the axon, increasing the speed of electrical signal transmission. Nodes of Ranvier. Gaps in the myelin sheath along the axon facilitates rapid conduction of nerve impulses through saltatory conduction, means jumping from node to node. Axon terminals, that is synaptic buttons. Small swellings at the end of the axon release neurotransmitters into the synapse, the gap between neurons, to communicate with other neurons, muscles, or glands. Classification of neurons based on their function. Sensory or afferent neurons. They transmit sensory information from receptors to the central nervous system. Examples: neurons in the dorsal root ganglia, olfactory neurons. Motor or efferent neurons. These neurons transmit signals from the central nervous system to effectors such as muscles and glands. Examples: alpha motor neurons, gamma motor neurons. Next is interneurons. Interneurons connect neurons within the central nervous system and integrate information from various sources. They are found entirely within the brain and spinal cord. Example includes pyramidal neurons in the central cortex. Functions. Neurons perform various essential functions in the nervous system, like sensory neurons respond to external stimuli such as touch, sound, and light, and send signals to the brain and spinal cord. Motor neurons transmit signals from the brain and spinal cord to muscles and glands to provoke a response. Interneurons connect neurons within the brain and spinal cord, facilitating complex reflexes and higher functions like learning and memory. Apart from that, signal transmission. Neurons transmit electrical impulses, action potentials, along their axons to communicate information rapidly across long distances within the body. Neurotransmitter release. At synapses, neurons release neurotransmitters, chemical messengers that cross synaptic gaps and bind to receptors on the next neuron, muscle, or gland, transmitting the signal and initiating a response. So, neurons with their unique structures and specialized functions are integral to the operation of nervous system, enabling everything from basic reflexes to complex cognitive processes. Synapse. A synapse is the junction between two neurons or between a neuron and a target cell, such as a muscle or gland, where communication occurs. This communication is crucial for the transmission of signals within the nervous system, allowing for coordination of various functions from reflexes to complex behaviors. Structure of a synapse. Presynaptic neuron. Axon terminal is the end of the axon of the presynaptic neuron, which contains synaptic vesicles filled with neurotransmitters. and synaptic vesicles are membrane-bound sacs containing neurotransmitters. Synaptic cleft, the small gap about 20 to 40 nanometers between presynaptic and postsynaptic neurons. This is the space through which neurotransmitters diffuse to reach the postsynaptic neurons. Postsynaptic neurons. Postsynaptic membrane is the part of the neuron or target cell that receives the signal. It contains receptors for neurotransmitters. Receptors are proteins on the postsynaptic membrane that bind neurotransmitters and initiate a response in the postsynaptic cell. Now, when you touch a hot object or when pin pricks your finger, what is your immediate reaction? Of course, you remove your hand away from the source of pain. This reaction is instinctive, occurring without conscious thought. It's immediate, involuntary, and sudden. Scientifically, this is known as a reflex action, where the spinal cord plays a key role. The reflex arc outlines the pathway through which this reflex action happens. A reflex is an involuntary and immediate response to a stimulus, playing a crucial role in our survival instinct. Most common reflexes are automatic reactions that stem from the cautious behaviors we have internalized over time. For instance, when we quickly pull our hand away from something extremely hot or cold, this is a reflex action, an automatic response that operates independently of conscious thought. While reflexes are linked to our instincts, they aren't the same. Instincts vary from person to person, shaped by individual experiences and understanding. Reflexes, however, are direct, immediate reactions that don't always rely on prior knowledge. For example, even if we don't know whether a pan is hot, a reflex might still prompt us to pull away if it is. Thus, while instincts influence our responses, reflexes function on a more basic automatic level. Neuronal action. The process of a reflex involves two main types of neurons: afferent, that is sensory neurons, and efferent, that is motor neurons. Here's a simplified overview of how this works. Detection. The process starts when a receptor detects a stimulus, such as a sudden change in the environment. This detection is often influenced by instinct and involves sensory organs like skin. Signal transmission. The sensory neuron, means efferent neuron, then sends this signal to a relay neuron within the central nervous system. Relay. The relay neuron passes the signal to a motor neuron, means efferent neurons. Response. The motor neuron carries the signal to the effector, which triggers an immediate response such as pulling our hand away from something hot or the knee-jerk reflex. So, in essence, when the efferent neuron receives a signal from a sensory organ, it transmits this impulse via the dorsal nerve route into the central nervous system. The efferent neuron then carries the signal from the CNS to the effector, completing the reflex arc. Reflex arc. A reflex arc is a natural pathway that controls a reflex action. It typically involves a sensory neuron, that is efferent neuron, that detects a stimulus, a relay neuron within the central nervous system that processes the information, and a motor neuron, means efferent neuron, that triggers an immediate response in the effector such as a muscle or gland. The reflex arc allows for quick automatic reactions without the need for conscious thought, often bypassing the brain and instead routing the signal through the spinal cord. So, this is how a reflex action works. Here are a few examples of reflex action. The sudden removal of the hand from a sharp object. Sudden jerky withdrawal of hand or leg when pricked by a pin. Coughing or sneezing because of irritants in the nasal passages. When light acts as a stimulus, the pupil of the eye changes in size. Sudden blinking when an insect comes very near to the eyes. Knees jerk in response to a blow or someone stamping the leg.